Wendy from Virginia, terrific. Thank you so much. And Russ from Hyde Park in Chicago, great neighborhood. Wonderful. We've got so many wonderful folks. If you're just joining us, we're going to move on, but just go ahead and keep telling us in the chat where you're from and how many people are watching with you. Terrific. All right. Well, I'm Anna Garcia Doyle, the Executive Director of the One Earth Film Festival, and I just want to welcome you to our virtual screening and discussion. We anticipate that this event will present rich opportunities for learning and provide a brave and safe space for critical conversation around issues that matter deeply at this time in our nation and in our world. One Earth's 10th season theme is inspiring change. While watching Flint, Who Can You Trust?, I was inspired by the resilience of people who collaborated and advocated for themselves in the face of environmental racism and classism, collecting, for instance, 10 times the water samples in 6 weeks as the state itself did in 6 months. We couldn't do this work without the support of our sponsors and partners. So I really want to thank WBEZ 91.5 in Vocalo, Mother Jones, OVP Management Consulting, Edward Jones, Food and Water Watch, College of Lake County, and the Lake County Audubon Society. We really, really appreciate your support. Also, if your circumstances allow, please donate to support One Earth's nonprofit year-round screening events, youth programs, and more at One Earth Film Festival.
We are thrilled you're with us as One Earth Film Fest celebrates 10 years of inspiring change and utilizes the power of film to spark change on topics of environment and those intersected with environment, like social justice. The fest has had to adapt to a virtual format, but we strive to stay true to our model. While we're not physically together, we are here together, live, virtually, still able to create community, become aware of issues, engage in dialogue, and be inspired to act. African-American activist Angela Davis said, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world." The stories in our fest films reflect that possibility. Our collective actions will achieve that possibility. Our event will take place in 4 parts. We'll introduce you to some folks who will help us have a great discussion after the film. We'll then watch it together. Then afterwards, we'll unpack the film's themes in a facilitated Q&A with our wonderful panelists. Please participate by using the chat to share thoughts, ideas, or questions. We'll end by sharing concrete actions you can take to be part of the solution. These actions come from our panelists and other action partners. As we live current movements and reframe narratives around justice, environment, and bringing innovative, equitable solutions to our climate crisis, we're hopeful for the future. I am grateful to the knowledgeable filmmakers, film subjects, facilitators, and panelists joining this and other fest events. They'll guide discussions to help spark and sustain actions for the protection of our One Earth and for the just treatment of its resources and its people. We've found that shared agreements help keep our conversations safe and respectful. Please observe these agreements when participating. Put aside your preconceptions, acknowledge your privilege, internalize what you've learned, approach the conversation with respect. Engage your active listening, use I statements and get comfortable with your own story. Acknowledge Native peoples who came before us in protecting our land. One last thing before we meet our facilitator and program participants. If you're active on social media, tell people this is happening. Amplify these voices and be part of the community we're building here together. The hashtag for the festival is hashtag OEFF2021. Thanks again to all of you for being here. And now I'd like to turn it over to our facilitator to introduce themselves, the panelists, and our film.
Thanks, Anna. Hello, everyone. It's great to see that so many folks are joining us today. My name is Alejandro Bodipo-Memba. I am founder and CEO of OVP Management Consulting Group, which was founded and based in Oak Park, Illinois. It's a pleasure to be here with you. A few housekeeping items. Oftentimes, folks watch movies and then kind of walk out of the theater without really reflecting on the work that we try and do or what we've actually seen or how they actually feel about it. So today, we're going to try and do something a little bit different. We're planning to have a rich and thought-provoking dialogue sparked by the film that we're going to see today, Flint, Who Can You Trust? And we'll be joined by very knowledgeable and committed panelists. And we look forward to having all of you all participating and in this enriching dialogue with your reflections and your thoughts, as well as questions in the chat, and exploring ways in which we can all take action. And so with that, I'd like to briefly introduce the folks that will be joining me at the end of the film for the discussion. First, we want to welcome Nakiya Wakes, a Flint resident and a mother and water activist. She's currently joining us en route from Indianapolis to Flint, Michigan, and she will join us a little bit later. We also have Nathalie Baptiste, an environmental and columnist with Mother Jones Magazine, joining us from Washington, D.C. Now, one of the things I want to do now is I want everybody to join me in welcoming the filmmaker for Flint. Who can you trust? It's Anthony Baxter, who is joining us from Montrose, Scotland, to introduce the film. Anthony, welcome.
Thanks, Alejandro. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Anna, for your kind comments also earlier. Thank you very much for being a part of this virtual festival. I know it's a bit strange for us all, whether I'm in Scotland or you're in Chicago or you're in Michigan watching tonight. We're all part of this, getting through the COVID situation together. And I really applaud the One Earth Film Festival for carrying out tonight's screening in this situation. And in a way, we're all brought together in a different way, and perhaps a stronger way, because we can all pull together through this time and join together to throw a spotlight on Flint tonight. I'll keep this very short. I just want to say that basically I came to the story of Flint through showing a film at Michael Moore's Film Festival in Traverse City in Michigan in 2015. It was a different film. It was A Dangerous Game, one of the previous feature documentaries that I made that had a water theme. And after that screening in Traverse City, I went through to Detroit and did another screening there. And it was at that event that somebody came up to me and said, you should go through to Flint, because the people there just over a year ago had their water switched to the Flint River. And ever since then, they've been experiencing disastrous consequences from this. And this was before, of course, it became a big story, before the New York Times broke the story really to the United States and the rest of the world about what was happening in Flint. And I stayed in Flint through the story over the next 5 years. And the film you're about to see is what unfolded during that time. So some of it you will know in terms of, if you read the news about Flint and know the story a little of Flint, you'll understand some parts of it, but a lot of it you won't know. So thanks for joining us tonight. I very much look forward to answering your questions afterwards, and hopefully in a year or so I can actually join you in person in Chicago to meet you personally. But thank you for coming tonight to watch the film, and I look forward to speaking to you afterwards.
Thank you, Anthony, and we look forward to an engaging conversation as well at the end of the film. So with that, we want to make sure that everybody's comfortable, have your popcorn ready, want to make sure that everybody enjoys the film. So we'll see you right afterwards, and do stay afterwards so that you can be participants in the actual discussion with all of our panelists. Thank you. Wow. Very, very powerful film. For those of you that are with us, we'd like to take the next few minutes to hear from you, and we would invite everyone to give their reflections on what they saw over these last 2 hours in the chat, and we will try and read some of them and get a sense as to what is happening in the room thus far. We have a few folks that have already dialed in and have shared some of their thoughts. Jen has said, brought me to tears when the mother said, quote, "I did not volunteer my children to be a part of a medical study." I believe that was Ms. Gutierrez, if I'm not mistaken. Kim has mentioned, "My heart weeps for these people of Flint." Indeed. Julie mentions that none of this surprises me. The poor have no voice. They're coming in fast and furious. April is saying, I'm beginning to wonder if this is truly a documentary with all of the scientists and faux scientists and actors finger pointing. Wow. Kim is saying, I'm a water engineer and this pains me so much. I cannot imagine what Flint residents feel. We'll be hearing from at least one Flint resident in a few moments. Ashley is saying, this is not something I hear a lot of people talking about or knowing about. Indeed. Larissa is sharing, oh my God, this is insane, but what are we going to do about it now? How can we help? Larissa, this is going to be one of the issues that we deal with in this conversation with the filmmaker, with journalists, with residents. That's part of the reason why we're having this opportunity to discuss it with you and all the viewers that have seen it. Let's see, Linda, this is so depressing and utterly outrageous. Lisa is saying, it seems that there was never an attempt to find a solution to the problem. Mary's reflection, our Chernobyl, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Very powerful. Suzanne is asking, what can be done today? We have some folks that will hopefully be able to shed some light on that particular question indeed. Clearly, folks are being moved by this. Cal, if this town didn't have such a large Black population, this wouldn't have gone for so long. Kelly, I'm a native of Flint. My mother lived in Flint until 2018. This is also a case of racial and economic inequity. My mom's pipes were replaced well before the poorer neighborhoods were where the water was way worse. We're going to be talking about the inequity issue as well. Clearly, there are a lot of issues that are before us that are being confronted in this film. We probably don't even have enough time with the hour that we have beyond this to try and tackle it all. And we really appreciate all of the comments that folks are making and the questions that are coming up. What we're going to do is we're going to keep track of these, and throughout our discussion with the panelists, who I'm going to be reintroducing once again, we will try and get to some of the additional questions from the audience and the commentary from the audience as well. And thank you for the initial prompting to begin the conversation. Clearly, folks that have been watching have been moved, and with that, I think it makes sense for us to introduce or to reintroduce our panelists so as to begin the conversation and hear from the folks that have actually been on the ground. So I'd like to reintroduce once again, if we can have the slide move. There we go. So it is my pleasure once again to welcome the panelists for today's discussion. First, we will start with Anthony Baxter. Anthony is a former BBC journalist and award-winning director that Stephen Holden of the New York Times described as a, quote, filmmaker who refuses to be brushed off. His previous films include You've Been Trumped 2 in 2016, A Dangerous Game 2014, and You've Been Trumped in 2011. Anthony is joining us from Montrose, Scotland. Next, we have Nakiya Wakes, a resident of Flint, Michigan, who appears in the film Flint, Who Can You Trust? Nakiya is a self-described mother, water warrior, and water activist. Nakiya is joining us from Flint, Michigan. And finally, we have Nathalie Baptiste, reporter and columnist with Mother Jones magazine. Nathalie is a journalist who covers race, justice, politics, and how they are all intersected for Mother Jones magazine. Nathalie is joining us from Washington, D.C. And so as we get ready to discuss how this film has actually impacted not only the audience, but the actual participants, like to okay. So it looks as though right now we do not have Anthony or Nakiya at the moment due to some technical difficulties, but we do have Nathalie, I believe, and we can actually begin the conversation. Nathalie, are you with us?
I am here.
Excellent. So, Garen, I don't know if you can bring up there we go. Nathalie Baptiste from Mother Jones, it's great to see you. Thank you once again for agreeing to be on the panel and be a participant today. It's great to see you.
Totally. I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of get reflections from the panelists as well as the audience. And while we wait for Anthony and for Nakiya to get back on, I'd be very curious to hear your particular feelings about what you've just witnessed.
Right. Yes, happy to hold down the fort while we get technical difficulties sorted out, such as life on Zoom these days. Yeah. You know, something that really, really stuck out to me is, it's in the title, Who Can You Trust? I think, right now, all of us are kind of feeling that breakdown of trust of our public institutions. We had this pandemic, and theoretically, the United States should have been the most prepared country in the world. I mean, the CDC is a world-class organization. And we kind of watched, frankly, as our leaders lied to us and made us believe that it was all going to be fine. And we now know that it was absolutely not going to be fine. And I think that something that really stuck out to me was listening to the residents of Flint talk about how they simply don't trust the government. I think, honestly, for someone like me who is, lucky enough to live a relatively privileged life, I didn't understand that feeling really until the pandemic. Now, vaccines are being rolled out, and I find even me, someone who considers himself someone who follows the science and is a rational person, feeling a little bit skeptical. It's incredible, once you've been lied to by someone with power and who is supposed to be looking out for your best interests, it's really, really hard to trust them again. And I think that, that's what really resonated with me. I'm not from Flint. I've never actually been to Flint, but watching them, I'm like, I know exactly how y'all feel. It really do be like that sometimes, truly.
Indeed. Now, I have been following some of your work in preparation for watching today's film, and I know that you have you focus on the intersection of race, social justice, and the environment. And I'm curious about what your takeaway was with regard to the intersection that you focus on professionally that was pretty evident, at least from my perspective, in this film, that intersection. Could you talk a bit about what you saw, and also this idea that and it was mentioned on a couple of occasions by members or folks that appeared in the film, that once the larger media left, it seemed as though people forgot about Flint. Can you talk about those two ideas?
Right. So I can say this with full confidence that the media really does get obsessed with, the latest, hottest story, and it kind of lets problems go unnoticed. I mean, the reason why this was able to happen in Flint is you have a few things happening. You have a population with low income. You have a mostly Black population. They don't have the political capital that it takes for people to pay attention to the point where by the time the media was paying attention, it had already been a year and a half, right? And when I watching, a Republican governor kind of just be like, guys, the water is safe to drink, and honestly not take into, not think about all the other repercussions. Maybe the water is safe to drink, but why should they believe you? You've already said that before. And honestly, it pains me to watch kind of their concerns get brushed away. A few years ago, I wrote a story kind of on this topic of how, the scientists were saying this water is actually really great to drink. And the people of Flint were like, when have we heard that before? And, that barrier is so hard to break. And, I think today, even there's still people who don't trust the water and may never trust the water. I think it's something we have to think about, as a journalist. I try to think about these different intersections. Where are these people coming from? What is their background like? What has their life been like? And what? And then after the water crisis, then it turns out, oh, we were hiding the Legionnaires outbreak from you too. I mean, how much are people supposed to take from their government before they give up?
Exactly, and it's just the notions of these excuses that were coming from these supposedly respected areas of the community, the government, et cetera. It's just, from my personal perspective, it was just appalling. It remains to be. It remains so. I'm curious about what you are hearing now in light of the fact that right now we know that former Governor Rick Snyder has been charged criminally with regard to what his alleged role in the crisis at Flint. Can you walk us through kind of where things stand with regard to that particular issue, the legal battle, now that it's back in the headlines?
I will do my best to walk you through. As I understand it, as someone said in the documentary, the justice system just moves so slowly. And honestly, I think, at least for me personally, it came a little bit as a shock when I saw that headline. I was like, wow, they're really going through with it. And I know a lot of people in the media and myself are completely guilty of this. Honestly, you kind of forget because there's just so much happening. And something that happened in the wake of Flint was, we all wrote these stories. It's not just Flint. It turns out this is a nationwide problem. Our infrastructure is completely crumbling. No one's paid enough attention to the environment. And so I think that right now what's happening in Flint is that the system is moving as slowly as it always does. And it can be discouraging, especially when, it's not making the headlines every single day.
Absolutely. And just so we can kind of keep this connected to the audience, because folks are really responding to what you're saying. Madeline is saying, Nathalie, Baptiste, thank you for connecting this to the pandemic. This is very similar to how poorly those who should know better have handled recent disasters, for example, hurricanes and wildfires. That's absolutely correct. Another comment, Charles is asking, what are the latest scientific determinations about the water quality, and when was it deemed safe as this was not resolved in the film? And that's a great segue, I believe. Do we have Anthony on the line?
We unfortunately don't have Anthony right now. Okay,
understood. But certainly that's a question that we definitely want to have answered at some point in time. One of the things that I would like to just address, again, as a viewer of this film, I was struck actually by Dr. Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech University's lab talking about this post-truth world. And I actually, I think that, when Anthony is able to join us, I think I'm going to pose part of this question to him with respect to the title that he chose. Anthony, it looks like we have you back. Are you with us? You may be on mute, sir.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. Good. First and foremost, welcome back. Secondly, this is such a powerful film. It's clear, just at a personal level, it's very, very moving by virtue of the number of texts that we're getting in the chat. It's clearly moving a lot of people. So kudos to you. One of the questions I just wanted to ask you, just after having shown this and having been involved in the making of it for the 4 years plus that it took to make this, how do you feel now that it's out here in the world and kind of being seen for the first time?
Well, I think in a way it's it feels to me that I wish really we'd been able to get it out for now, in the sense that obviously the people of Flint have been through this for so long now that it's really a case of just trying to illustrate to people that the situation continues for them. And, I think in a way the frustration sometimes when you're making a film like this is that there is this period where, you're not able to reach an audience with the story because it continues. I think one of the things that Nakiya Wakes, and other residents in Flint say to me a lot is, that we're still going through this, and that's because although the science and scientists will tell you that the water in Flint is safe now, the feeling amongst people is, a lot of people in Flint, is that we just cannot trust it, and and for those people, it's a continuous, constant struggle. Just not being able to trust what's coming out of the tap, so it's. I think that the main thing is for people in Flint is that trust was broken and shattered so many times throughout this whole episode. It's really, really tough for somebody who has lived through this for so many years to be told that the water is safe, but just not to believe what they're being told by the scientists or people in authority, because they've been, just lied to so many times. And that's a real problem, I think, and one that just hasn't really been tackled because of the number of people who still use bottled water all the time in Flint today.
Indeed. And, I found the title, the choice of language that's used for the title, Flint, Who Can You Trust, really provocative. It to me evoked, frankly, going way back, this notion of the Enlightenment era and a John Locke kind of perspective on the foundations of how Western democracies have been founded on empiricism, on science, on data, on truth. And yet, as you were just suggesting, virtually everyone in this film has been lied to by multiple folks. Can you talk to us about how you actually selected this title and why you really chose to focus on the concept of truth?
Well, I suppose the title of the film being simply Flint, and the line, who can you trust, is just basically the continuation of what I was just saying. I mean, it's a case of really just thinking about, for the people of Flint, they are not able to trust anybody at the moment. When you have somebody like Donald Trump, who obviously is no longer in the White House, but questioning every aspect of, say, for example, COVID-19, then it leaves, I think, and then questioning the science behind that, then it leaves people in this position of just not knowing who to trust in terms of authority and the science as well. And so I think it's it's just feels in a way the right title to me. It's really just the city and the situation for the people of just not knowing who to trust, and that is the continuation of what people are going through today, really.
Indeed. And do you have, first of all, are you still in contact with Mark Edwards or Scott Smith? And what is your takeaway of their participation in this crisis?
Well, I'm not in touch. I haven't been in touch more recently with Scott Smith or Mark Edwards over the last sort of month or so. But certainly when the film first was shown, which was exactly a year ago at the Glasgow Film Festival, and then also in Washington, D.C., we were planning to do a very public screening, of course, and Mark Edwards was going to be attending that, but then we had to put it all online because of COVID, and that's been the situation since. So I haven't seen Mark Edwards and Scott Smith, since probably the end of 2019. But as far as I know, we've actually recently just contacted Mark Ruffalo, to see whether he has anything else to add in the light of the passage of time that's gone by since actually completing the film. I think the thing is that for viewers today, and probably for some of the people in the film, things might have changed a little bit because the story is continuous. I think that was one of the difficult things with a film like this, is that there's never really an ending, particularly for the people in Flint and the children in Flint today. There's no end to this story, and also I think it's important that since the whole COVID situation has emerged, that we realise that people in Flint have been dealing with both that and the water situation continuously, and that continues today. Say the not just the mistrust in the water and the situation for them, but I think really it's a case of a double whammy of this situation where they don't trust the water, but they also have the COVID-19 situation we've all had to deal with. I mean, 3 pastors who are very involved with the water fight for the residents of Flint have lost their lives to COVID. So there's been a real awful situation, I think, for people to deal with both the water disaster continuing and also the COVID situation. And so I wonder whether that may have impacted on people involved with the situation, be it Mark Ruffalo, be it Scott Smith, or indeed Mark Edwards.
Absolutely. You had mentioned the children of Flint, and one of the featured residents of the documentary, Nakiya Wakes, I believe, is with us. Nakiya, are you with us? Doing well. We are very happy to have you with us and honored that you're with us. We have just witnessed, a film that raises a lot of questions, frankly angers a lot of people, myself included. It's really it's a tragedy of epic proportions. I'm wondering if you could share with the audience, after having viewed the film and also having lived through this and continuing to live through this, what are some of your reflections or your takeaways on all that you've seen over the course of the last 6-7 years regarding the Flint water crisis?
One thing is, over the last 7 years, Flint is still the same. We still cannot drink bottled water. It's ridiculous. It's been over 7 years now. We should be able to drink our water. There should be some type of change, which there isn't. They're just now starting to come out with these lawyers and all this stuff about the money and all this, but really there's no amount of money that can bring my babies back. There's no amount of money, my son, for the rest of his life. There's no telling 5-10 years down the line what is going to happen. The doctors can't even tell us. So it's just no one has been held accountable for their actions. Nobody has been charged. Governor Snyder, they're talking about a misdemeanor. Are they serious? There has been deaths of the Legionnaire disease under this Flint water crisis. He should be incarcerated, just like Kwame Kilpatrick and everybody else. He should be incarcerated.
Indeed. You mentioned your son, Jalen. How is he doing? How's your daughter?
Jalen is still struggling in school. I've had him tested by a neurologist. He has intellectual disabilities. He also has cognitive problems. I have paperwork on that. My daughter, she just had a baby, and they're saying the baby is fine, but she's in Indiana, so it's different than Michigan. They really don't know anything about the lead exposure. So, of course, the baby is probably fine now, but later on down the line, like I told my daughter, she needs to let the doctors know that she did live in Flint all of them years and that was exposed to the lead. But right now, they're saying the baby is fine. Just had the baby, so she's fresh. She's not even a week old yet.
Congratulations on being a grandmother, indeed.
Yes, thank you.
Indeed. I was particularly moved by the last scene of the film, and I wondered if you wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing your thoughts about how you came to that particular speech or poem, if you will, at the end, where you and your colleagues as water warriors were at the Flint water treatment facility.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little going in and out. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Can you hear us?
Yes.
I could perhaps, Alejandro, while Nakiya is struggling there with the audio. So, Nakiya, this is just the point of the water plant where you and the other residents are there,
yes.
and you.
When we went to the water. Oh yeah. That was me just really expressing what I went through my miscarriage, and just letting people realize, for one, I wasn't the only one that miscarried through this Flint water crisis. And I just wanted to let people know that the water company, where we was at and why we did that was the source of all of this that was going on with us. Came from there. So that's why we decided to go there and do that.
It was very, very powerful. It was very powerful to me, and a wonderful way to end the film. I want to ask Nathalie one question before we head to some of the audience questions, as there are many. But I'm curious about, the media and the media's role in this particular circumstance. Clearly, at the moment of crisis, folks swoop in and, you see cameras everywhere, etc. But then, as we've seen in the film, there are lag. And I'm curious about whether why we haven't seen more similar stories, perhaps around the country, that have similar kind of circumstances or plots. Nakiya, and I'm curious. Nathalie, and I'm curious about whether we're seeing more of these kinds of incidents taking place across the country. Effectively, is this like the new Love Canal kind of scenario in the 21st century?
Yeah, I think that, especially right now, for instance, in Mississippi, a historic winter storm rendered their cities, their water plant inoperable, and they are going on, I believe, of 3 weeks of no water. And this is happening right now. And, during Flint and after Flint, it kind of became this light bulb moment for the media. And it was almost like everyone was scrambling to find, they're like, this is the next Flint. And that was always kind of a misnomer. It wasn't so much the next Flint of this is how much we've neglected poor people, and this is how much we've neglected Black people and Black communities in this country. And one place that comes to mind is a county in Kentucky. It's very rural, and I can't think of it right now. So a lead and water situation. And unfortunately, I think what happened with the media is that it turns out that this was actually a widespread problem, so it became less interesting. At that point, it was kind of like, oh, well, poverty, yeah, what's new? Find me the new sexiest story. And I think that, me and Mother Jones, we really do try our hardest to be like, hey, there's also this thing that we have to pay attention to as well. But honestly, it gets overwhelming. I get overwhelmed when I think about like all of the Flints that I've never even heard of. Right. Wow. And, the media's role right now, the media that you hear about, they're more focused on like advertising dollars, like cable news and stuff like that. And you've got places like Mother Jones, we have our skeleton staff, we're trying to raise money from donors. And it gets really, really hard to stay on top of things. But like, I'm always grateful from like emails from activists that are like, hey, you jerk, pay attention to this thing. Those are the kind of mean emails that I like. If I'm missing something, just email me and tell me I'm not paying attention to the right thing. But it can be really difficult, and it hurts to, kind of see the media like just move on to, the next sexy thing. Meanwhile, in Flint, they're like, hey, we're still suffering, and God knows how many other towns out there are suffering as well.
Absolutely. Anthony, I wanted to come back to you one more moment before we go to the audience. You and I spoke prior to today's program just a bit about the notion of hope. And we're going to get to what folks can do towards the latter part of this conversation. But Anthony, if you could just talk a bit about what you because I thought your response yesterday or earlier was rather thoughtful with regard to hope and the citizens of Flint. Can you talk a bit about what gives you hope moving forward?
Well, I think it does come down to the residents, really, who have been through so much and shown so much resilience, and still people like Nakiya, despite everything that they've been through, continue to hope for a better future for themselves and for their children. I think as well, now that there is a new president in the White House, I think the hope would be that there is some federal funds to help people in Flint in the future. I mean, it's interesting to me, that with the situation in Texas and the horrendous weather there and the impact that's had on people's lives, that was declared a disaster zone, which meant that federal government money came through to the people affected, and that hasn't happened really to the people of Flint in the same way. And I always felt there that there was a real opportunity for the Obama administration at the time to put in some real money for the people right on the front line, and that didn't happen. I think with the charges that are being brought against the former governor, Rick Snyder, and other officials as well, finally, that there may be some kind of justice for people too. I think it's been incredibly difficult for Nakiya and other residents to have seen those who were responsible for this disaster to escape justice, to escape the at least being put in the dock, and for them to hear them being questioned about the decisions that they made at the time. And those people have always, it seems to the residents, sought to put the blame elsewhere. And certainly from my experience in Flint, that seemed to be the case. There was never really, Rick Snyder took so long to do anything at all to help people. I mean, apart from a few bottles of water, there was no real on the front line help for residents. So I think that despite the impact of this and COVID, as I say, that's had a huge impact, obviously, on people's lives in Flint, that there has to be hope for the future. Also, for the children of Flint, I think the real question has to be about support for them in the future, and whether they can access the kind of support that I think everybody wants to see for them. People like Jalen, who, as Nakiya was just saying, it still really suffers today as a fallout from this, and nobody really knows the full impact of the lead poisoning on the children of Flint, how that's going to play out in the future, how that's going to impact on them in their adult lives. I mean, this has been going on now, obviously, since 2014. So that's 7 years. And for many in Flint, that is a lost childhood, really, because they've had this impact on their lives. And the profound circumstances that they find themselves in continues today.
Absolutely. I think we're going to go to some audience questions, and these will be to the panel. I believe we have Nakiya back with us, hopefully. And as we will wait for her image, I want to read a question from Chris, who is saying, having two, quote, experts switch sides smells funny. Do we know more about what motivated those changes and where these two are today? Anthony, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, for Professor Mark Edwards switching sides, it all came down to his belief that by working for the governor, he could have more of an impact on the crisis and the disaster. It always struck me that he in some cases, and obviously he's not here tonight, so we can't ask him directly what he thinks now, but certainly at the time, he believed that by working for the governor, working for Rick Snyder's administration, he felt that he could have more of an impact on the aftermath of the disaster rather than not. So I think that was that. With Scott Smith, I think there was certainly a case that the prospect of litigation was clearly in his mind, as he says in the film, and that was an overriding factor for him.
That seems fairly straightforward to me from my eyes. A comment here from Kim. It's just wild to me that all of this happened because the governor wanted to save $5 million. Just blows my mind. Marcy's asking, has the reservoir pipes been changed and filtered? Have the people's pipes been changed along with the filters?
Well, the number of pipes replaced is still certainly not the whole city. And the problem with the pipe replacement program is it's only the pipes running from the mains to people's homes. It's not the rest of it. And that in itself is an issue, because as soon as you connect a new pipe to the old pipes, then there is a friction there which can disturb further lead levels. So although the water source obviously has changed back to the original source, the Great Lakes and Lake Huron, it means that the damage has already been done. Now, the corrosion control that is now going into the water, and the fact that the water is back to the original source, means that the problem of that was first exacerbated really by the switch to the Flint River is not there, but it continues because there's no way really of just overnight flicking a switch and for everything to go back to normal. And I think that's really the problem for residents, that they feel that when they are told by scientists that the water is now safe, they themselves don't believe it because they've already been told that many times, and they know that all the pipes have not been replaced in the city. So it's very difficult for I think people to know that, and to have seen all the pipes from the water plant, as it were, to their homes replaced. Because without that, I think there is going to always be this mistrust.
Nathalie, I'm curious to know if you can talk a little bit about some of the health prospects and consequences of this kind of a debacle. You mentioned that you've heard and are learning about things that are happening in other parts of the country, Mississippi, et cetera. Talk a bit about some of the health consequences or outcomes that result from these kinds of circumstances.
I think that this is two parts, right? So obviously in Flint, we saw legionnaires, and I think that the effect on women's reproductive systems is maybe one of the most under-discussed outcomes of this disaster. But also once you have that mistrust in public institutions, the amount of people you don't trust, maybe you don't want to go to the doctor, when something hurts, because everybody's lying to you. And I think that a lot of the health outcomes are also going to be, things not necessarily physical, but mental as well. And hopefully we can hear more about this from Nakiya. But with the miscarriage thing being so under discussed, I wonder what else is going on in Flint that folks won't even bother talking about anymore. And it's something I think about all the time. And then, I always come back to the pandemic because it's just taking up so much space right now. But I mean, when the pandemic first started, the first thing we heard was, you got to wash your hands, always be washing your hands. And, one of the first things I thought about is like, oh, with all this dirty water in America, you can't even trust the water. And now they want us to wash our hands. And there's just got to be so many places where it's like, oh, now they want us to use the water. Well, no, thank you. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit because this is just like something that I think about all the time. It's just like not trusting any systems. So you don't trust the government. You don't trust medical systems. And like the effect that has on people, just like, it keeps me up at night, truly. It's just kind of like a domino effect of devastating consequences.
And certainly, as you mentioned with the COVID crisis, it's something that is just on so many people's minds. And actually, it's exacerbating the circumstances, certainly in Flint and elsewhere. Anthony, I'm curious, do you know if, or do you have any additional information with regard to Dr. Atisha, Dr. Monahana Atisha? Does she have any sense of kind of the health prospects of folks going forward, particularly young people?
Well, I mean, part of the problem with not being able to do these events live with people is that I haven't spoken to Monahana Atisha for at least a few months. But I think certainly last time I spoke with her, there was a feeling for her as well that the plight of the children of Flint is very, very much a problem today, and obviously Nakiya can talk more about that with the impact on Jalen. But I think Nathalie's point just now as well about the situation we're in today with COVID and being told to constantly wash, is really striking a chord with me, because if you can't trust the water coming out of the tap and you're still in a situation of dealing with that today on top of the COVID situation, it really is appalling for not just the children but everybody in Flint. And I think for the long-term impact for children is desperately uncertain, because nobody really has studied or at least brought to the fore the impact of the lead poisoning. And Nakiya as well has spoken very, very movingly in the past about how she fears very much that the initial switch to the river water had a devastating impact on the loss of her twins, and it's something that's echoed right across the city. That I think people who've lived through this and have so many unanswered questions, and also worry about the impact on their daughters and children in the future as well, and for Jalen's education too. I just think it's not just a case of the impact today of this lead poisoning and everything else that's gone through, but it's the future as well. I mean, how is that going to play out for him in the future and other children in the city?
I think, it doesn't go unnoticed that the young people of Flint recognize this. I mean, I recall Elijah Loren was crying over his brother in the film because his brother's no longer responding in the way that he had prior to all of this taking place. And Nakiya, I think we have you back now. Can you hear us?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Not at all. Not at all. We're glad to have you. And one of the questions actually that I wanted to ask is reflected in a question that comes from Marcy, asking whether any of Scott Smith's testing was accurate. And obviously, you're not a scientist, but I'm curious about what you were told then and what you may know now from whatever sources about the relative safety of your water system. And then secondly, I was hoping you might be able to talk a bit about the activism that you're doing in Flint now as a water warrior.
Yes. One thing about Scott Smith's testing, I was surprised when all of that came about with Scott Smith, but I don't really know about him being a scientist or whatever he said he was, but I really trust what Scott Smith had gave me. I had over 80 pages of paperwork, and not only was it lead, but there was other heavy metals and other carcinogens, which I believe was in our water. We don't just have to worry about lead. I mean, that's Flint River water. GM had all them oils and all that stuff they were putting into the water. Of course, it's going to be more than just lead. So I believe the paperwork that Scott Smith gave me before I believe the MDQ EPA, because I got all different types of results from MDQ, EPA, even the CDC. I got different results from all of them. So I do not trust the state. I trust what I've received from Scott. I mean, it had all type of everything that was in the water.
Indeed. So why don't you talk to us a bit about the work that you're doing with Water Warriors, and specifically how you are moving the needle in Flint and letting people know what they can actually start to do to help?
One thing we've been doing, I mean, we're really trying to get our people out to vote. That's a problem here in Flint because of the situation, the whole emergency manager and all of that coming in, taking our democracy and stuff. It's just really hard for Flint to trust. And I mean, everybody is talking this, our vote doesn't matter. And like I told them, we have to get out and vote. Once I started talking to the people about voting, people will get out and vote for president, but you got to vote for these mayors. You got to vote for these people to get them out, for these people that will make a change for us, because we already know the government's not going to do it. It's been over 7 years and we still cannot drink this water. But Hillary Clinton said, if this happened in Bloomfield Hill, believe me, something would have been done. This is ridiculous. It's been over 7 years and I'm still having to go somewhere to get bottled water. This is unacceptable. It is crazy.
Indeed. So one of the things I want to do is bring the entire panel back and just talk a bit about some solutions now. One of the things that we want to do is kind of arm the audience with not only kind of words of wisdom, but in fact, what we can all do. Basically, we want to make sure, and I'll read the quote here, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That's by Robert Swan, who was an explorer and activist. we know that that's not the case, certainly after having watched this film. And so we, the people, have to actually start making those changes. And so actions that we can take. I want to go around the table to kind of get a sense as to some of the things that each of us feel we can do to begin to start making change. Nakiya has clearly talked about voting and voting at a local level. That's something that's extraordinarily important. Nathalie, what would be some of your thoughts for the folks that have been watching this film in terms of how they can begin the process of being more active in raising awareness, not only with Flint, but all communities that are suffering in similar manner?
Besides from voting, especially on the local level, because I love promoting that, you've got to vote. You've got to vote for like that county councilman, and you know where his office is, and you can just go yell at him to give you things that you need. But speaking of yelling at people to give you things that we need, I'll use the example in November, during that very contentious election, the state of Michigan, the Michigan Republicans were trying not to certify the vote. And so what the people of Michigan did, and I would bet there are tons of people from Flint also on the line, they all got on the Zoom call and just absolutely gave it to the board members who were trying not to certify the election. I mean, like, people after people were going on speeches. I mean, honestly, a little bit of it was cyberbullying, right? And it worked. And I was like, now that's incredible. They didn't even have to leave their houses to do that. And, last summer, we saw this protest movement. I'm talking, people going to the streets and being like, no, we're not leaving until you give us what you want. And I find that to be really effective. It can be easy to fall into this trap of like, well, no one's even listening to me. It doesn't really matter. But then if you actually really think about it, if you get enough people, they'll have no choice but to listen. And that's why, I think it was really powerful that the film ended with a protest, because I'm like, yeah, sometimes you just have to go down there and be like, no, we're not leaving. You're going to listen to us. And what's the worst you're going to do? Have the police put you in handcuffs for a little bit? You'd be all right.
Indeed. Anthony, how about you? Any thoughts with regard to what folks can do now?
I think we just have to keep the pressure on and the spotlight on the people of Flint. And that has to continue in the new presidential era too, with Biden in the White House. There has to not be a let-up of the focus for the residents, because this has just been, as Nakiya has said, it's just gone on so long, and people have not had the resources and the help that they deserve and need. And I think there has to be an acceptance that there is real need in the city of Flint today from not just the children, but the older people as well. It's right across the board, and this continues for people today. It's a very real disaster that continues to unfold on top of everything else for people in their lives. And so there cannot be a let-up of the spotlight being shone on people like Nakiya and Jalen and all the residents who have gone through so much. That just has to continue. And I just hope that through the film, obviously things change, circumstances change, people we cannot continue filming forever. It has to be down to the outreach and the impact of the film raising awareness that people in Flint are still suffering today, and there has to be the resources for them to rebuild their lives.
Indeed. I'm going to go off script for just a bit because we have so many comments from the audience. I just need to read some of these so that we get some of the sense of what people are feeling having watched this film. Let's see here. Mary, heartbroken. I still don't understand what happened. Is the water safe? Who's telling the truth? No criminal charges. What about suing Scott water expert, Scott Smith? Didn't he misrepresent himself? What about Virginia Tech guy suing that lady? Unbelievable. Ashley saying Obama shouldn't have pretended to drink the water. It was like a slap in the face. Teresa, Governor Snyder and other officials were charged with criminal offenses last month. Sherry, I'm outraged. The situation seems so hopeless. Julian is saying, very well done. I appreciated the information. Knowledge is power. So sad. Would love to be part of the solution. Let's see. Meg and Nick. Oh, go ahead, Anthony. Yes.
No, I mean, I think the one of the points there really about people just reflecting really on Rick Snyder facing charges and other officials as well. That is a change since the film was made. In fact, ahead of the release of the film in the US next month or the month after, we'd like to just tweak the very end to reflect that too. I think with it'll be interesting to know whether Scott Smith. I mean, I know Nakiya was talking earlier about Nakiya reflecting on the results that you got from Scott and feeling that you trusted them perhaps today more than certainly a lot of the information you've had through from the state on your water. I think a lot of people in Flint feel that as well. I think Mark Ruffalo and Water Defence, they went into Flint meaning well. I don't think there certainly wasn't a kind of deliberate attempt to mislead people. I think there was a feeling that they were going to plug the gap of misinformation that was reaching people on the ground. I think people felt very understandably, and I can completely see why this is the case, that they were not being told what else was in the water. And it was an absolute fact. The state was only testing for lead. That was the only thing that the state was testing for, as Nakiya reflected too. So much else went into the river over the years, from GM and other industry on the river, that, over the last few years, they have, since the water switched back to the Great Lakes, some cleanup attempts. But, that's only recently. That's not... the damage had been done, and so who knows what else the children of Flint and Nakiya or the adult population was consuming in that water. And, in a way, that's what Scott was trying to get to, I think. He was trying to understand what else was there, but as he himself admits, he's not a scientist. I think that was the issue. He went into Flint perhaps keeping that side of his credentials, under wraps, as it were, in a way that wasn't so upfront with people. I think probably today he'd do it differently. It'd be interesting to get him on a panel like this to see what his answer to that question would be. But I do think Mark Ruffalo certainly was well-meaning going into the city and trying to answer these questions that weren't being answered.
Thank you for that. We have a few minutes remaining, and I do want to share a couple of more thoughts from the audience. We've got folks from all over the country. We had folks that were trying to get in from Europe and the Caribbean that were not able to make it this time. But actually, there was a question as to whether there will be a European screening of this. I'm certain that there'll be a number of folks that will be interested, Anthony, and we'll have to talk about how folks can see the film in that way. One of the things I did want to make mention of was, let's see, Dina's saying, not only does poor water affect hand washing, but all of these people who drank and were exposed to this water now have underlying health conditions. Yet another example of COVID-19 disproportionately affecting people of color. Mary asks, are there any grassroots efforts, rainwater collection, fungi water filtration, cleaning the water? See Ted Paul statements, cleaning pollutants with fungi. Meg and Nick say Aaron Brockovich wrote a book called Superman's Not Coming, and that we, the people, need to stand up for ourselves. We all need to leave today and make our voices heard. The government can't or won't help. Alan, just missed that. Nathalie, please come to Chicago and cover the Southeast Side's fight against polluter General Iron. A lot of sentiment, a lot of strong feelings here. Nakiya, I want to come back to you as we kind of close out. We've been talking a little bit about what we know that people can do, or what we believe people can do. I'm curious if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the viewers from around the country that have seen this story, your story specifically. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with them with regard to how to get involved and be helpful. Yes, Nakiya, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry, my son.
Not at all.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. We would love to see Jalen actually, if he wants to come talk, that's great too. Absolutely. I was just asking. If you had any words for the viewers from around the country that are watching, how they can be helpful, just your thoughts with regard to the film itself and the work that you're doing with Water Warriors to eradicate the circumstances in Flint. And Jalen, we salute you. It's good to see you, sir.
One thing I try to keep on the map is, it's not over. And like you said, I just try to let people know that this could happen anywhere, but it happened in Flint. And of course, there has been a lot of other Washington, D.C. and all of this that had lead exposure, but never the whole community exposed. No, that has never happened besides in Flint. So it's like, I kind of get tired of people like, well, Flint ain't the only one that got lead. Yeah, Flint, our whole entire city got poisoned, kids and all. This has not gone on in D.C. This hasn't gone on nowhere else. A few people got lead exposure, which I'm not saying that it's right, because really shouldn't nobody. The lead exposure is irreversible. We did not do this to ourselves. So why is it that we, the people, have to fight and have to do this, and that to get a change, which we have been fighting for 7 years and still no change? We have been going to the legislators. We have been doing what we're supposed to do, and still, no change. And at first we were asking for bottled water and all this, but how long can we still keep getting bottled water? That's like putting a Band-Aid. I need money where I can get up out of Flint, me and my son. I don't have the money. If I had the money, I would leave here. $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, that's not enough. I'm finna have to move, relocate, start all over again. I'm probably never gonna trust water ever again. I'm not drinking nobody's tap water. I'm gonna be on bottled water probably for the rest of my life because of this.
Indeed. It's one thing to kind of watch this as a film and kind of almost, be a bit of a voyeur and kind of watching these things happen from afar. And then as we finish tonight, we'll go to our families and think about what we've said, what we've seen rather. And yet Nakiya and Jalen and others in Flint continue to suffer through this. And so the degree to which all of us that are found it interesting enough to participate tonight, perhaps there's more that we can do. There's more that we can actually offer than, just, condolences and well wishes. So one of the things that we wanted to do was want to try and call out some of the actions that we've discussed. We've discussed those. We're going to make sure that we share with everyone the take action points that you see on your screen here, the recording of this discussion, and a transcript of the chat with the ideas and resources that have been shared. Let's see here. Connect with nature, go outside. Community engaged science requires a commitment to respecting the public, their experiences, and knowledge. Communicate and learn. Stay informed about policy issues, local environmental news, and the latest, the region with trusted news sources like WBZ in Chicago, daily newsletter, wbz.org/newsletter. Flex your citizen muscles. Vote, organize, write, or call. Consider climate action or climate issues on local, national, and global levels. Get to know your environmental area representatives. Do good. Volunteer at various community organizations and stay updated on opportunities with Vocalo in Chicago. Improve society, fostering equality for all. Absolutely. So these are just some of the things that we want folks who saw fit to join us tonight to consider, to take action, to make change to what it is that we've witnessed and what some of us are experiencing in real time. And so we just want to bring the entire panel back. I just want to see you all and thank you for being here with us. Anthony Baxter, Nathalie, Baptiste, and Nakiya Wakes. Can we get everybody back? Yes, we've got everyone back. It has been my pleasure, my honor to spend some time with you all this evening. Again, the film is just amazing. The discussion was great. I've learned a lot. Nakiya, your story is just inspirational. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for spending the time with Anthony to kind of get that story out. I think it's very, very important. Nathalie, continue all the work that you're doing in this space. Obviously, we don't want anybody forget about Flint, but keep the word out there. Let folks know what's happening across the country. We need to hear more about what we can do as a community. And Anthony, thank you very much for this amazing film. It is just, it's a stunning film. Everybody needs to see it. And we just want to thank you for spending the time and actually debuting it here at One Earth Film Festival. Indeed. I think that is all of the housekeeping that I need to do. Let's see here. To learn more about our panelists and stay in touch with them, see the links on this slide, the thank you slide that you'll be seeing. Remember to tweet, post, or share about what you've just experienced online and social media. If you have found value in today's event, please donate to One Earth Film Festival and join us again this week, Earth Week in April, and throughout the year. Last but not least, a huge thank you to each and every one of you who have been here from around the country, who have participated. Let's give all of ourselves and the program participants one last round of applause. We all know how to do that here in Zoom land. Once again, thank all of our panelists and want to thank you all for taking time to be with us. It was a pleasure. Thank you all very much. Take care.
Thank you.